Hey, welcome back to the Nomad CEO. I'm today here with James Peter Lifestyle, and this is a super interesting episode. I'm really excited about it and honored to have him on the show. He's a resilience coach, which is precisely what I think is one of the most important things to teach people because we all lack resilience. It's not what that I had to learn the hard way when I lost my company. And so that's why those are the stories or the challenges that I love to tackle and to talk about. And so I'm gonna ask the same question I always ask at the beginning of my podcast, which basically is, what was your James Peter, James, what was your pivotal moment? What was your transformational moment? What made you decide to become a resilience coach? And yeah, just share your story with us. Welcome to the show.
No, thanks, Roman. Thank you for having me. And yes, I'm blessed to be here. So yes, my pivotal moment, I guess, ultimately for myself was 2017. So it doesn't seem too long ago, but then in a way, it's like 7, 8 years ago now. I was living a life where, yeah, everything was good. I had a very good upbringing. I was again a sort of a company co-founder. We were doing many different things in the kind of the recruitment startup space. Everything was going great. Then I had catalog of things happened to me in a very short period of time, but I had no tool set at that time. I'd done no personal development, any self development at that particular time. So hadn't built up any really real resilience or didn't really know anything about self help or anything like that. And the first one was I lost my dad. He died of cancer. And then I lost my son. And then I was also accused of, he was 4. And then I was accused of a crime which I hadn't done. 6 months of everything being generally okay in life, good. I was suddenly sat in a police cell thinking, what the hell's just happened? And but unfortunately, I had no tool set. I had nothing to deal with this type of situation. And so instantly at that moment, my mind went straight to suicide because that was the only thing I could particularly think about was the opportunity of a way out of here. So I sat in a police cell. I was there for a little while. Eventually, obviously, was released pending this investigation of what I'd been accused of, and that actually went on for about 8 months, where I was living in this very difficult situation where I was continuing to work. I just lost my dad, lost my son, was going through this criminal investigation, and still had to function because I was a business owner. I had clients to fulfill. I was doing a lot of work, especially with co-founders and CEOs. So I had a lot of work to do, but I was suppressing a lot of this stuff. Like no one really knew what was happening outside of my own world. I'd shut myself in. I shut friends out. Obviously, I had friends of my family around me, myself, but I'd really very much sort of narrowed myself in. And always, if I knew it got to a situation where I couldn't handle anymore, suicide was my outreach. I'd already planned this in my mind and everything like this. It was just a constant way of going through this process. Well, ultimately, fast forward 8 months. So I did go to trial. I went to a criminal court. I was not guilty in about 10 minutes after a 2-week trial. 2018, my life started again ultimately, or the new life started again. And that's really when I started underthinking. I saw life very differently than I had done before. Like before, life was very comfortable, everything was going well, there was no real issues. And suddenly I'd seen a different side of life through loss, death, through then going through a criminal situation, being in police custody, through to going through criminal trials, going to courts, seeing what it's like in that particular situation. It's a very, I guess, enlightening experience for someone who's never been in that situation before. So, and how you're treated as well as a person, as well in those situations. Generally, we were treated with a lot of respect. Especially I have, going through being company business owner, going working with co-founders. There's a lot of respect there. But suddenly having no respect and people basically pretty much spitting in your face because of the accusations you'd been, accused of. So it's a very difficult thing to get your mind around. And obviously this has a massive impact on your self-image and self-esteem, in particular. It was really through that 2018 and 19, I started getting into personal development. I started understanding things a little bit more, started listening to people like Joe Dispenza and started listening to
Yeah.
people who just were, offering a different, more the inner journey rather than out. I was very outwardly facing, very much around materialistic things and cars and watches and clothes and, having a nice house, all these type of things, which actually I've realized over that period of time of loss and everything that all that didn't actually really matter anymore. And really what was mattered was what was in here and who you were as a person. So I started doing more work on this, and ultimately fast forward to 2020, obviously the, COVID times and stuff like that. And I ended up embarking on a Jay Shetty certification program for life coaching. And that took me a year to do and go through that process. It's a very extensive process. I'm not sure what it's like today, but that's what it was at that particular time. It took 12 months. So I think there's so many coaches out there now. But say I had to sort of go do a 12-month certification to get to be a certified coach. And yes, and it's just really materialized. I'm there. I sort of wrote a book in 23, and that got released. And really, it's just a passion to help people. Like I never really want everyone to be in my situation, going back like 6 or 7 years when they hit ground zero because they had no tool set to understand life's challenges, especially if you've never been through certain situations. I'm now mid 50s, so this hit me at sort of my late 30s, going into 40s. So I hadn't done any personal development at that time. I didn't really grow up in that type of environment. Obviously, I knew people like Tony Robbins, but I hadn't done any particular work, and just didn't ever want someone to be in my situation of having to go through a challenge in life, which we're all going to go through, without actually having zero tool set to get over it.
Wow. First of all, I want to say that I'm really glad you're on the show. I really appreciate you on having you on the show, because I call those rock bottom moments you had. My own screw up, fuck up feels like a walk through the park, compared to lost your dad, lost your son, and then accused of a heinous crime, I guess, or something. It sounded like that, because when somebody loses respect for you, or people around you lose respect for you, it's probably something I so that is, I mean, resilience is something you cannot because you said you didn't have the tools before to tackle or to sort of confront this situation. Suicide is something that I went through too. I gotta admit here, when I lost my business, I actually had that thought in my mind way too often, and I did not plan it out. Like, I did not have a structured plan. So I'm going to do this and this and this. I didn't get to that point. I've read a bunch of articles and also watched a few videos talking about the issue, because it's an issue that primarily men suffer from, and I think it's not really discussed enough, because we're killing ourselves in droves. This is a reality, and it's not getting any better. It's getting worse if you look at statistics. And so I'm just outright angry that people don't really care about that stuff, because it's men. It makes me angry, to be honest. Because if it was women, we would all be in emergency situation right now. I feel like, at least that's the thing. And that when you get to this point, and because it's obviously the lowest energetic level you can possibly find yourself in, it's somewhere between shame and apathy, and it's just, and then I've been there, and I know, because and then also, obviously, it feels like no one cares at all, like on a personal level. And so I really admire you coming back from that in such a, and then, you know what? It's inspiring, because there's another guy I interviewed not long ago. I think you're from Australia, right?
No, UK.
Are you okay? Okay, yeah, sorry, I've confused the accent here. I interviewed another guy from Australia, and also a coach, and he phrased it. He said the wound becomes your purpose. Like, that's what you do, right? So you turned your wound in something greater than yourself, and now you're using that same resilience that you were equipped during that process, of this terrible moment, and then you're helping others to also rise to the occasion, so to speak. It's yeah. So my point here is basically, I think no one is prepared for that. You can do as much preparation and spirituality and trying to tackle. I don't know. And how goes the saying with the sailors? No, rough seas.
Yeah.
That's it, right? So the question I have for you is, how did you stay? How did you end up choosing the right path? Because at the end of this, you chose to get through it, push through it. What was your
Yeah, so I think when it first happened and everything I was going through, obviously went into massive, obviously victim mentality, and obviously this is stuff I learned now when all after the fact because I didn't have any personal development or any knowledge, and obviously I've studied and stuff like people like Dr. David Hawkins. I know the graph of consciousness, but I didn't really know I was in states of apathy and shame and all this. I didn't know anything like that. I knew I was in obviously low level states because of the fact that I was obviously contemplating suicide, but I didn't really understand how much of an impact that actually has on your psyche and especially around your self-image and who you are and so all this type of stuff. Obviously, I've learned that later on as I've gone through the journey. But I remember, yeah, this is what happened around sort of, the July time of 2017. And I remember I really needed to go and see someone, but I was very reticent to do that because obviously I was going for a police investigation. So if they knew I was seeing someone, because obviously I grew up in a time when we kind of had that stiff upper lip, man up type of attitude going up in the sort of, I guess, 80s, 90s, whatever type of thing. No one was going to therapy or counseling, or coaches weren't even something we even spoke about. We even probably were really out there apart from a few. So I just was bottling it up and I was suppressing a lot of it. I got a lot of stuff there. And so that's why the suicidal things came up, because I had no outreach. I had nowhere else to go. And it was only really when someone recommended a counselor to me who lived close to my house. And so this was probably going into January 18. So it was a good 7 months on from actually the everything, even though I was going through a process. And I went and I sat down with her, and it was just the most enlightening experience because there was someone here who obviously had no judgment, who just listened, who didn't obviously I was speaking lots to family members, and obviously they were all having their own opinions and kind of having a lot on top of that, whereas obviously this person had no judgment. They just listened. And secondly, they were practiced in, well, they were kind of teaching Buddhism practices. So the first thing she got me to really to start doing was voicing things out loud, keeping a journal, and meditating. And I hadn't done obviously I didn't know any of this stuff, but I remembered starting meditation just using the Calm app, which obviously is quite mainstream now, but obviously at the time it was quite small. Just doing 5 minutes a day, and I remember there was a 2 week gap because obviously I had people who were looking after my case from a kind of a lawyer type or solicitor type perspective.
Mhm.
From 1 week I saw them to 2 weeks after I saw them again, they just saw a completely different person, because the first person they were seeing was someone who was just rabbit in the headlights, was just in shock. Their whole nervous system was completely, my nervous system was completely burnt out. It was just, I didn't know what was going on, and they were worried about me as a person, not only obviously my mental state, but obviously secondly, could I actually go for a criminal trial, like, because that's one of the toughest things you're going to go through when all eyes are on you for 2 weeks and taking the stand and all this type of stuff. And they were really worried about me doing that because I was just numb. There was just nothing there. But then they saw me 2 weeks after, and I was communicative. Ultimately, I'd calmed my nervous system. I was out of fight or flight mode. Obviously, I didn't know this at the time. I didn't have any of this terminology because I didn't know what this was about. But I realized through the meditation, through my calmness and practices, I'd started to calm my nervous system, and I'd
Yeah.
started to calm my inner being, and I'd started to become a lot more coherent, and I could be a lot more communicative and make sense. And they were seeing someone who was a lot kind of stronger as a person. And that was all down to meditation, because I hadn't done that was all I was doing. And that was only 5 minutes a day. So I wasn't actually doing a lot. And so I realized how powerful this work was, even with what was very minimal. I do a lot more now, and I've done a lot more previously. Like I've done 10 day silent meditation retreats. I know how powerful those are, but I realized I've even just 5 minutes a day and not actually doing much else apart from maybe some journaling, you can actually really change your inner state. And so that's really what kicked me into this journey, really.
Yeah. It seems like two things helped: a connection to another person who just listened, which is
Yes.
also a big one. I think this is probably one of the most important things that anyone can, in difficult situations, that you have someone that actually wants to know, wants to listen, and wants to help you. Because there's this, usually when the shit hits the fan, then there's very few people that stick around. That's the reality. You can be lucky to have someone who, or a friend, right, or family members. I'm not sure if, yeah, I mean, it's good to have family that backs you up always, but in when it's really like very personal and difficult, sometimes it's better to have someone who does not know you,
Yes, 100%.
but shows some genuine interest in helping you. So I had such a person too, because I was also, since you brought up Tony Robbins, I was in, so my highest point in life, so to speak, when my company was making millions and I had everything went great. That was 2017, maybe a little bit before that happened to you. Had my best year, and I was coached by Tony Robbins' team, and so I remember that. And then everything broke down in 2020, and just it's not long ago, a year ago, I was still struggling very much about not knowing how to get out of this shithole I had dug for myself. And then I remembered that there was this guy from the team. He was not even my coach, but he was the guy who would basically select a good coach for you. And I called that guy, and he remembered me from years ago. And then we just had a 2-hour talk, which was so, I mean, that really saved me that day and for weeks, because that he would remember me, that he would, so because he assigned a coach and I only had 2 calls with this guy, but he did remember me, which was amazing. And so that was a moment. So connection is really one big thing. And men do not well at connecting with, what we usually do, and I'm very much guilty of this as well, is retreat, right? We suffer in silence a lot of the times, and we do this because we don't want to be, and you brought that up too, right? This man up attitude, which I would also argue isn't the 80s, 90s thing. It's just a man thing. It's just always been like that. Because we're sort of expected to take it all in. So women don't respond well to emotional men. So we just learn to bottle it up, right? So, and then we walk away, right? We usually try to walk away, which can be, I'm not even sure if I wouldn't even say that is negative all the way. It can help to be alone, to find because you need also, solitude can help to reconnect to your inner voice, especially if you're on a spiritual journey and explore and like trying to, because in today's day and age, we are, most of it's just too much noise, right? So
Yes.
how can you even how can you even get calm inside and find, because in a situation like that, what you need is this inner stability to sort of counteract or compensate for all the chaos around you. And then this, because it obviously depends, I think, also on the type of person you are, because in my situation, I've always been like an anxious person. So I started meditation really early on. And I remember also a situation when the day I lost where they changed the lock of my house, and I was like sitting on my bed and I was just meditating, and I did like a 40-minute meditation and got calm. And what also worked for me is this breath work, like
But it's very
do you
powerful,
know
yeah.
Wim Hof breath work? That is, if there's one thing that can really just fucking like smack you in the face and to get you out of this terrible, like, because it's when you are in such a situation where you suffer, like you have this inner turmoil going on and this anxiety boiling up all the time. The only thing that really helped me to calm down like is this Wim Hof thing, because it does change all your, like, the whole everything. You get that calm, like, so like almost like a drug or something, like almost like an instant fix that you can just supply yourself, but not unhealthy one, like not not a substance abuse thing. But that helped me a lot. And then just focus. Well, Tony Robbins again. So where you put your energy is where you put your focus is where your energy goes, right? I think
Absolutely.
those are, but that is hard to do if you're scattered mindset, if you're all over the place, and then focusing on one thing and a cell phone in the other hand is just really difficult endeavor, I guess.
Oh, it's very much, it's very true. I think yeah, understanding and calming your nervous system, the breath work is so powerful. I did get into the Wim Hof time. I can't remember now, the sort of 2018, 19, I started doing Wim Hof. I mostly do box breathing now, but I've done somatic breathing. I've done quite obviously a number of different breath works. I've done a lot of some of the pranayama breath works as well. I mean, all of them are really powerful, and you can use them all at different times. But yes, I think understanding and calming your nervous system is really where it's at, because once you're able to do that, you can just everything just calms down. It's like you tell people who I work with, it's like if you're sat in your car and you just have your foot on the accelerator, just revving the engine at high revs, and that's like your body internally. It's just high. It's just that it's high level, and you can't think properly. You can't think coherently. You can't really. Everything's just at a certain state. Whereas obviously when you take your foot off the gas and that's the breath work coming in, you can calm everything down. And once everything starts to calm down, you can just start thinking coherently, and you can start understanding things a little bit more, and you start taking different perspectives, and you can tap in a little bit more to what is called like your third eye, your intuition. All this comes into play a lot more, level of awareness and consciousness. So yeah, breath work, I think, and obviously meditation are just super powerful for rebooting yourself internally. And I think that's the challenge, because obviously it's now very common, we hear it all the time now. But I still think, especially people that maybe at my age or that, still find that meditation very, generally quite challenging to do, because they just, yeah, they're unable to, sit ultimately in silence and do it. And sometimes we expect too much. And that's where I think I came in or understood, is that I was only doing 5 minutes a day. I was really not doing very much. And I noticed a profound difference. So that's really what I try to teach people, is that actually you don't need these long antiquated type morning routines. Yes, they're great, and yes, they work and stuff, but that's like a different level. That's like, if you have never run a marathon before, you're not going to suddenly go out and run 26 miles. You're going to probably start and do maybe a 5K. And that's the same like with anything like meditations in there. Like, you're not going to suddenly sit and try and do a 20-minute meditation, or, if you've never done one before, you start with like, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and then you build up, and it's just having that knowledge to do that. So yeah, I think it's a super powerful way to not go down the medication route. I think that's the thing. I think I was never a person for medication, really. I hadn't grown up in that type of environment. I didn't really go to doctors. I wasn't a big, it just wasn't something. It wasn't something I was massively opposed of, but just something I wasn't also big on either. So when obviously I went through my situation, naturally if I'd gone down the noted route, I would have been diagnosed with PTSD, and I would have been given antidepressants. But I never did. I never went to a doctor, just because I was probably more afraid of it going against me in a criminal trial, or from a police perspective. I think I was very wary of doing anything which would have me labeled as someone who had a mental health issue. I just didn't do anything ultimately until I eventually saw a counselor. So it wasn't a choice to not do it. It was a choice that I didn't want it to affect something which would come back to later haunt me. But I never went down the medication route. And I'm very obviously thankful for that, because maybe I would have done, in another time. And I know how difficult then it is to get off those.
Yeah, I one of the things that I have to be grateful for, because of my rock bottom moment, was that it ultimately helped me to get off all of. I just don't drink anymore. I don't do anything anymore. Like,
Yeah.
I ended up in a hospital, and then when in that moment, and then I was like hooked on benzodiazepines for a few months, and Valium stuff, and this is the worst thing you could possibly be addicted to. It's really the worst addiction you could possibly. I mean, if you're on that, you can't sleep. If you stop taking it, you're unable to sleep. So it completely destroys your life from yeah, it's horrible. So I actually think that the whole body mind thing is so connected. I mean, of course it is, but I would actually argue that in order to be okay and fine and not like mentally, you can't be just consuming crap or taking medicines and prescription drugs and stuff like that. It's just it's like going into to the gym and smoking cigarettes at the same time. Like, it's so stupid. Like, it doesn't work. At least not in my situation. I know people who consume like normally, right? But I've always been like an addicted person, so to speak. I could not really handle moderation, and so I quit just stopped, quit altogether, and I'm really happy and grateful about that. So yeah, so now I'm looking for it's just more energy now, focus, more productive, just more positive, like optimistic, with a better outlook on life in general. It's just when you wake up, it's just a different way of waking up. That's my take, and I regret one of the few regrets I have is that it took me so long to actually realize how big of a game changer that is. Like, just eat clean, healthy, don't drink.
It makes a
Completely
huge
underrated.
difference. Yeah, it makes a huge difference. I think one of my get outs, what I wanted to do, I threw myself into like physical fitness and so,
Yeah.
as an out. So over the course of 2020 through to sort of 23, and even now today, but probably more so 2020 to 23, I was doing. Well, I did quite a number of ultra marathons, like 250-kilometer ultra marathons in different countries. I went through a Navy SEAL Hell Week, and I was doing so much physical work that actually, yeah, I stopped drinking, uh, end of 21, and so for 3 years now.
Me too. Me too. End of 21.
Yeah, and I've always been sort of conscious of what I ate, and probably even more so now. So even still now, obviously mid 40s and stuff, I can still knock out a marathon in 3.5 hours and all this type of stuff. And I just realized what you could do when you kind of ate the right thing, and how clearly you can think properly, and how much energy you have is also it's all very important. And it's
Yeah.
actually bizarre because actually I've got a gran who's actually going to be 100 next month. Fingers crossed. Obviously she gets there. And I was just obviously speaking to her and realized actually that her longevity is a lot down to the fact that she's doesn't take any, or has never really taken any pharmaceutical drugs, never really been to hospital, never been to a doctor's, doesn't even reticent even taking stuff like a paracetamol. And so I just realized actually, I mean, if you want to live to that age, who knows? But I realized the longevity is actually not taking pharmaceutical drugs. And I think we've become a lot more conscious of this over the COVID times and the pandemic
Yeah.
and the vaccine and all that type of stuff. People are a lot more conscious now of maybe of stuff than they were before. Yeah, it was a great realization to a certain extent. This person who's nearly 100 is, just, yeah, the longevity is just down to the fact of never taken even a paracetamol, really. So yeah.
That's amazing. 100 years is a lot. Is a lot of time on this planet to hang around. And I agree that it's actually not so much about what you can add to your life. It's more of what you just remove. It's more about removing the stuff that does not help us or serve us, and that can have a much bigger impact on quality. So I had a recent discovery. Not long ago, just 2 months ago, 3 months ago, I started to go on a keto diet, moving all. I was already not consuming a lot of sugar, but I removed everything carbs, like all, because of the sugar carbs, almost is the same. And so went from 21% body fat to 11% in only 2 months, and building muscle at the same time.
It's
Like,
crazy.
crazy numbers. It just, I had a chronic pain in my ankle when I was walking, so I could not run. I also used to run and do like 10K runs, or was running pretty often, and then I had to stop for a year and a half. Could not do it because it was so painful. And then I did the keto thing. 5 days, James. 5 days. It took me to completely eliminate that pain. It was gone. I couldn't
That's
believe
that's,
it. I
that's
mean, how could it's amazing. It just disappeared, and my body, in this very moment, it's still transforming. Like, it's amazing to me, because we were told, and they have been lying to us, at least I've been told my whole life, that having this cereal in the morning is a good thing. You should have your breakfast, and then you should have this and eat this and that, and all of these green vegetables. It's all a lie. It's just
yeah.
not true. It's just all a lie. I'm 90% carnivore now, and I know
Yeah.
this pisses
So
people
similar.
off. People are pissed off by this just because now it's against these, progressive worldview where you have to be almost vegan and you can't consume. The truth is that my body is just the reaction, the things that improved from my, and I can tell you, it's not just the numbers on the paper that prove this. It's also the clarity I have, the mental, I can concentrate like, I do not kid you. I mean, it's 5 times longer than before. It's just the reality. I have a lot more focus, mental clarity, and there's proof of that. I started this because I watched a podcast on, this, what's the name, the English entrepreneur, super famous, The Diary of a CEO,
So yeah, Stephen
British young
Bartlett. Yeah.
guy, I forgot
Yeah.
his name, Barter.
Yes, Stephen Bartlett. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had a guest on his show. Now it's just 3 months ago, and then he basically explained to, I mean, how this all works, right? With your body and insulin resistance, and how insulin resistance is really the root cause for all of these illnesses, from cardiovascular to a lot of different issues. And that by just not consuming these carbs that trigger your insulin levels, and so your body starts to heal. And I said, man, I mean, I'm just gonna try that because I'm not well. I don't have the energy I want. I have this health problem with my ankle, and let's give it a try and just commit to it for at least 2 3 weeks. And the changes are, I'm not going to go back, of course. Amazing. So yeah, and then why are we not telling people more about this? Because I think Stephen Bartlett was also accused of peddling misinformation, or somehow some form, the BBC reported on some, I think they made a hit piece on him about him peddling like misinformation, when in reality it's just the opposite, because I'm living proof that it's not. It says so. Yeah, I mean, we're living in extraordinary times where truth becomes the lie and lies become truth,
Yeah,
and they're just,
absolutely.
it's just so amazing. I mean, yeah.
No, we definitely do live in a strange time from that perspective. Yes, I think. I mean, there's obviously quite a lot out there, especially now with social media and how that's kind of exploded over the last sort of couple of years or so. And yeah, there's a lot of people who are obviously like Instagram for one, and who are following the carnivore diet and influencers and there and that. And so, but as I say, it's against the mainstream, and so
Totally.
so they have obviously a very different opinion. But I think that is one of the beauties. Obviously, the social media side has many pluses and minuses to it. The way you look at it, I guess the plus side is in the fact that you're hearing a lot of information now which you just didn't get before.
Yeah. So there's really only two positions one can have. I feel like one is that you feel like it's not ethical or morally not okay to consume animals. And then you can have this, like, then there's the other position is like, okay, you think it's healthy to not eat meat-based, animal-based products, right? But so after my experience, there's just one left right now. It's just not, you could argue, okay, you can still argue you wouldn't want to consume animals because it's ethically not okay. But yeah, that's just one of many topics that are controversial nowadays, I guess, and are being pushed out of the, or at least are this one-sided reporting on it. I can just, like, another example is Jordan Peterson's daughter. For example, Jordan Peterson is a carnivore too. They have the same. Now I understand what happened to him and his daughter. His daughter had, like, I think she almost died. They had to replace her hips, and she went through a horrific, like, for years she was also at risk of suicide, and then did that same and completely healed, like, magically, like removed the toxins, sugar, insulin, and then completely healed. And then she had a TED talk about her experience, and they would not publish. They took it down just because it goes outrageous. It's just how this is like this. Oh, it's not approved by the media, by the mainstream media narrative, so now we have to take it down, right?
No, very
Yeah.
much so, and I think that's I think that's where you get obviously different platforms. a little bit more like X or Twitter, whatever, by Elon Musk. It's obviously, if free speech, you see a lot of information, and there you get a lot of information. You could classify as quite potentially quite a toxic platform, just because obviously it's there's so much there, but then there's obviously amazing insights there as well. But yes, I think it's about following the right people. There's a person here in the UK, ex bodybuilder, and I think he's like Eddie Abu, something like that. He has way over like millions of followers on Instagram, and he's all about the carnivore diet and talks about that, and obviously very much goes and is against anything process driven. So he'll go into supermarkets in the UK and he'll call out cereal, he'll call out protein bars, he'll call out all this type of stuff and tell you ultimately it's shit, don't eat it, just stick to steak, just stick to eggs, liver, all this type, just keep it as basic as possible. And people are following him. He has a lot of followers who are having transformational experiences because they're just keeping things simple. They're going back to what is called the caveman diet. They're going back to basics. This isn't processed food or, all this type of stuff which we generally eat today isn't things we should be eating. We didn't, when you go back to centuries, we didn't eat this type of stuff.
Yeah.
The body
So
hasn't
I actually,
theoretically changed.
yeah. Yeah, so I actually tried both back. I also tried not vegan, but vegetarian for 2 months. I tried that because I had read a book just called Eat to Live, which was written by a guy who back then I believed, and I therefore decided to give it a try, and then I just for me it didn't work. Energy levels were not good, and I didn't see any improvement at all. But yeah, it comes down to what you just mentioned, which is just don't eat processed food. I'm not even arguing that we should only eat meat. You can still eat plant-based food. I mean, it's just that some plants are better than others, right? In terms of if it's controlling your it's about controlling your how much carbs you consume, right? The human body isn't built for high carb consumption. That's the reality. This is just the reality because we never were, and we just came up with these crops and stuff we eat now all day, right? Bread and pizza and all of that, right? So that's just not a good, not in excess, I guess. Yeah. Before we get caught up in more nutrition-based conversations, I want to give you another a question here for the audience because you're a coach, right? And you're a resilience coach. So what would be interesting to me is that how did that, now talking about applying your new found knowledge or experiences through that struggle and through the nuggets, the lessons you were taught the hard way, how do you apply that to your clients now? How has that informed your current method or methodology to help other people?
Yeah, well, I think it been obviously through my particular journey, I realized that I needed to build up a stronger mental fortitude to a certain but mental resiliency. I didn't have that in place, and obviously then I was thrown into a situation which obviously I didn't ask for. I wouldn't have, but sometimes these situations aren't naturally things we would do out of choice anyway. Like the universe doesn't do things to us; it does things for us when we chunk up to a higher level of awareness. If the universe has done, obviously, when I got into this, the universe has done this for me. It means I need to be stronger. This is a real challenge for me to build mental fortitude. So I dove in and obviously, as I mentioned, started doing ultra marathons and started doing Navy SEALs training and started to do all these different like CrossFit types of challenges to build my mental fortitude. Now, I'm not saying someone has to do that, but I think there's an element that we have to do hard things. We have to do stuff which is more
Yeah.
uncomfortable for what we want to do, whether that's starting to run 5K, 10K, or start to really push ourselves and do stuff which is not natural. Water therapy as well, whether that's a cold shower while that's jumping into an ice bath at home, or whether that's jumping in the sea. Like doing these difficult challenges really starts to push us out of our general comfort zone. So that's really what I'm about, is being able to take you as you are today, of what you've been through, and not concentrate on that. The story is the story. We don't want to get too caught up in that. But what's your future self? What is this future person of you looking like in the next, 6 months or 12 months? It doesn't have to be, a grand vision, but it can be done over in stages. And to say, okay, well, if this is your future version, you write it down, you have it as I'm this, and this, then how are you going to, what are your daily habits to get there? And it's really building in those habits. Is we start looking at, I don't know how powerful stuff like meditation, breathwork is. So that's obviously always on the list to start with, because I think you have to have a strong connection in the morning around that. But then making these conscious choices, I think what I've found is people go through life on autopilot, making decisions without actually making them as a conscious decision. And that could be anything. It could be picking up your phone and scrolling on Instagram, but you actually haven't made a conscious choice to do that. You've just, it's become a habit. Now, I know, is that really taking you to your future version of yourself, or where you want to go? What is your income? Do you want, what body do you want? What type of partner do you want? Even if that's what you're looking for, how do you want to improve your relationship? So we have all these down. We'll kind of have all these questions down, which I go through and work with a client, and then we start saying, okay, what are these habits to get you there? And then we start building their daily habits to get to their ideal self, and what is their future version of their self is. And it's just about always focusing on that future version of yourself, not languishing in what's just happened and I can't get over it and stuff. And I also take them through an exercise where we can take what's happened and transform that into looking at it from a gratitude. So you take what's the worst thing that's happened, and then we'll go through an exercise to transform that into a stage where they can actually look back and be grateful for that happening. Which is, I've done that. I mean, I only teach people what I've done, and it's difficult. I mean, I had to, when I did it, and I had to be grateful for the loss of my dad, and grateful for the loss of my son, and grateful for going for a criminal situation. Most people would say, I could never be grateful for that. Fine, because you have to do the work. You can't, it's about getting out the analytical mind, because sometimes we think to ourselves, yes, I'm over that. Oh, that doesn't bother me anymore. But actually, deep within you, it's still there, and it's about getting out of this and actually connecting to the heart. And actually, when you've really connecting to this person, that they like, especially like forgiveness. Everyone can say, "Oh yeah, I forgive this person," but actually, deep down, they haven't really. They've analytically or consciously said they forgive them, but actually within them, they haven't. But actually, we need to get to the feeling, and we have to transform that. So it's about changing their whole identity, which I've realized is like self-image, self-esteem, all self-worth are paramount, really. Like, you have to have a strong self-image. And that's what I didn't realize when I went through my situation and being in that suicidal state. That had a profound impact on my self-image. I really had a low self-esteem. I really had a low opinion of myself. And it took a long time to change that,
Yeah.
because I had to completely, the person I wasn't the person I was going to be in the future. I'd been through an episode where I couldn't be the same person anymore. We have to change that self-image, because a lot of people come to me and their self-image is in the toilet. They've been through a situation, or they have a very low opinion of themselves. But obviously we have to change that, because obviously self-worth is the paramount thing to change. Until you change that, then your energy and your vibration starts to up. I know he's up the states of consciousness, as David Hawkins would have in his map. Get out of those apathy and those low level states to get into the kind of up to, courage and love, which are the higher states. But when we're at those states, things in life starts to change, because everything's energy. We're all energy beings, and we have to change our energy to change, to change ultimately our life.
Yeah. Yeah, this is powerful stuff. It's easier said than done, right? Because you can, and then I feel like, I mean, what are you doing? Like this coaching, life coaching, the lines are blurry between therapy and coaching, and ultimately it's all mind based. It all starts and ends in your mind, and what in this what you just brought up with the self perception and how we talk to ourselves, and the energy, the emotional home we tend to, like, the where we always come back, right? Because there's this default state we all have, right? The emotional default state, and then So yeah, it's, I guess when you have someone, it's easier to point out to get an idea of in what shape a person finds in itself, in what emotional state, or not just physical, but like when you look as a coach or a therapist, you look at the person and you can. That's why I think it's because earlier I said solitude can help, but at the same time you need, like, in a way that the same way you need a coach or a trainer in the gym to get results, you can also like apply that same logic to because sometimes we don't see the trees for the forest, right? So we don't see what's going on, and then we just like habits, like we continue on this loop that does not lead us to the place we actually want to go. Sometimes we don't even know where we're going to go, right? So that's even a worse situation.
What I do say to people is that you have all the answers within you. We were given, all come from source. You know, we can go into level, we can go into high levels of awareness and realize that the oneness of God is all within us all and everything like that. We can go into those type of levels and those sort of deep areas. But ultimately is that we have all the answers with us. We already have those. Or they know this is so loud that we don't actually get to hear our intuition, or we've shut this off for so long that we don't trust it anymore. So certain sparks of intuition come to us, but we just say, oh, I can't do that, or oh no, that's not me. Oh no, I don't want to do that. You know, sort of things where we're given these little nuggets of gold, you know, on a daily basis, but we don't listen to the messages because it's either drowned out because of this, or we just don't trust this anymore. And so that's really, I think, where working with a coach or working with someone, because they can really help you, you know, find that self within you, you know, give you that, you know, I think it's all about a mirror, really. It's not being, I think, from a coaching perspective and being in this stuff, you're like, no one wants to be told what to do. It, and I've found my own answers really to a certain extent, but she could slightly guide me, say, okay, try that, or maybe try this, or look at certain things. But as I was speaking my truth and speaking stuff out loud to someone, things were naturally just burning off. And I think that's the thing when we operate in a more of a secluded environment, is that it's us and ourselves, and we speak to ourselves generally in derogatory terms, but we're not speaking stuff out loud, and we're keeping everything bottled up, and it's all just getting jumbled up. Whereas actually, we speak to someone and start speaking out loud of what our thoughts and feelings are, we suddenly have these cognitions and these realizations, very quickly. So that's why I think it's very powerful to speak to someone else.
It is, but just has to be the right person, because there's also,
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot of a life coach. There's an almost negative connotation to the word life coach nowadays,
I think
because
there
there's
is
so
now,
many
yeah.
good. Yeah, this it's yeah. Obviously, there are very good ones. Tony Robbins is maybe the most famous one, but yeah, it's it's become a crowded space, I think, and yeah,
I think you're right.
but
You're very right. Yes, I think that's all I ever. I mean, when I do what I do, I just always do it from what I did, what I've been through, and that's it. I think and that's it really. If people resonate with that story and think I can help, great. If people don't, then they don't. So it's not. I'm not trying to project. I think that's the thing. You don't trying to project what I know onto people. It's just being able to understand that I was in a similar situation. And if someone resonates with that story, or someone resonates with, the self, and I can help, then I'm here for that.
yeah, and it's also like in other professions, right? We should we should make sure that the person we're trying to get advice from is actually someone who's, I mean, an expert, right? And you wouldn't take lessons from a trainer, from a um, fitness trainer that has a body of whatever, with a fat and so I think a problem with the social media space nowadays is also like this so-called experts. They haven't built anything. Like, why would you take advice from someone who hasn't actually built anything? And so in your case, that those traumas that you overcame, that's like the muscles of a good trainer. Like this is giving you the you prove to be capable to get to the other side, right? So yeah, it's but yeah. So James, I really appreciate the conversation
You.
was really awesome. I enjoyed this conversation a lot, and I just want to finish off the podcast by asking you how people should reach out to you so they can get contact you. And yeah, I don't know if you want to add anything else
Oh,
to it.
thanks so much. Thanks very much for having me, Roman. It's blessed again, blessed to be here, blessed and to reach out to me and have me as a guest. Yeah, for myself, it's you can I'm generally on most of the obviously the social platforms. So if it was Instagram, it's James Peters at James Peters Lifestyle. My web address jamespeterslifestyle.com. And yes, if someone wants to also take a look at my book, then that's on Amazon and it's on it's audiobook, it's Kindle, it's also
What's the name of
paperback.
your book?
So it's Unleashing Your Mind's Potential, Transforming Loss into Triumph.
Okay, I'm actually gonna check it out too. Amazing. All right. Thank you so much one more time, and I wish you best of luck in life. And
You too,
yeah,
Robin.
thank you again.
Thanks
Goodbye,
again.
James.
Thanks. Thanks. Bye.